Hey everybody, of the many different contradictions that are in the Bible, I think one of the most fascinating has to be the question of who killed Goliath. Now, there are 6 total occurrences of the Hebrew word Goliath, the name Goliath, in the Hebrew Bible, and 2 of them occur in 1 Samuel 17, which tells the story of David killing Goliath, the story that everyone who has ever been in a Sunday school classroom has heard. And in describing Goliath in that chapter, it says, Ve'etz chanito kimnor ogim, which means the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam. Now in 1 Samuel 21 and 22 we have 2 more occurrences of this name in reference to the sword of Goliath. But then we have 2 other occurrences. One is in 2 Samuel 21:19, the other is in 1 Chronicles 20 verse 5. And in the 2 Samuel passage talks about a Bethlehemite named Elchanan who killed Goliath, and it says Goliath Hagiti ve'etz chanito kimno orgim. In other words, Goliath the Gittite, the staff of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. So this is absolutely the same Goliath the Gittite that is described in 1 Samuel 17. Now when we go to 1 Chronicles 20 verse 5, the text reads a little differently. It actually says that Elchanan killed someone named Lachmi, and says Lachmi was the brother of Goliath the Gittite, staff of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. Now, somewhere along the way we've had some changes introduced to the text, whether intentionally or unintentionally. There are some textual problems with both versions of this story, but the overwhelming scholarly consensus and the only plausible case to make is that 2 Samuel 21:19 represents the earlier version that was altered in 1 Chronicles 20 verse 5, and there are a handful of reasons for thinking this. To begin, the name Lachmi would be a Semitic name, not a Philistine name. This is not the name that would be given to a Philistine, the brother of Goliath. Second, the name would mean my bread in Northwest Semitic languages, and that's just not a naming convention that has anything to do with ancient Southwest Asia, whether we're talking about Semitic names or Philistine names. So that is very clearly a corruption that was introduced by someone who spoke a Semitic language. This is not the name of an actual Philistine. Finally, the way the text was changed was facilitated by how similarly the letters looked. For instance, the direct object marker et from 2 Samuel 21:19 was reread as achi in 1 Chronicles 20 verse 5, which means brother of. And the tav and the het look very, very similar. However, they only look similar in the Aramaic script, which was adopted by the Judahites who were in exile in Babylon and brought back to the land of Israel. Prior to the Babylonian exile, the old Hebrew script, the tav and the het looked nothing alike, which means that this change happened during or after the Babylonian exile, and it was the books of Chronicles that were copied during or after the Babylonian exile. So the data point firmly in the direction of 2 Samuel 21:19 having the earlier version of the story, and 1 Chronicles 20 verse 5 having the most changed version of the story, which means that 2 Samuel 21:19 preserves a tradition that attributes the killing of Goliath to a man named Elchanan, and almost certainly this was inadvertently preserved within the text, but the people who produced the stories about David and his rise to the throne appropriated that story and attributed the killing of this giant to David, and that is the story that becomes more elaborated on, more innovated on, and more popular within the authoritative literature.